Hello, my name is Woodrow Hill, and this is a presentation called Picture My Life. Today we'll be going over my experiences, my relationships, my identity, and my communication skills and how they have shaped who I am today. The pictures shown represent where I currently am in my journey as an industrial technology student, an energy engineering minor, an entrepreneur, and a robotics engineering intern. If I had to choose a theme song for my life, it would probably be My World by Chucky. It talks about resilience, being by yourself, and also growing as a person, which are values that clearly align with who I am, and they have defined a lot of my journey, growth, resilience, and continuous improvement. My self-concepts have changed significantly from my childhood to my adulthood. As a child, I was naturally curious and enjoyed figuring out how things worked. This curiosity eventually became an interest in engineering, robotics, and technology and business. During adolescence, my perceived self and presenting self were often very differently internally. Sometimes I would question my abilities and compare myself to others. Externally, I tried to present confidence and competence as a quiet person. Over time, my self-esteem strengthened by experiences such as running my own business, earning internships with Jefferson Lab, participating in NASA research, and taking on leadership opportunities. My self-esteem was sometimes diminished through social comparisons. I also compared myself to various STEM and engineering students, researchers, professionals, and people in general who seemed farther ahead than I was. Looking back, I can see examples of self-fulfilling prophecies and the Pygmalion effect. Positive expectations from my mentors, my supervisors, specifically my mentor from my first engineering internship, encouraged me to perform at a higher level and to accept that you're not going to know everything, but still lead and take projects with confidence. My self-disclosure test score was a 20, which suggests that I am relatively selective with who I talk to about my problems and about what's going on. And I normally need to build trust with you before discussing personal experiences. My identity is shaped by many different factors. I'm a black man, a Christian, an industrial technology and energy engineering minor. I'm an entrepreneur, a federal robotics engineering intern, and someone who's interested in advanced, complex engineering systems. These identities interact with one another through intersectionality. Some of these provide advantages, for example, access to higher education, professional mentors, internships, and technical opportunities have provided great benefits to my life. As a 20-year-old, others can create challenges. As a black man pursuing advanced technical work, I've sometimes found myself underrepresented in certain engineering spaces. At the same time, this has allowed me to also see black technical leaders in spaces that have helped shape my own aspirations and validate the field I'm going into. This is why I have a NSBE logo on the screen to show that that's an organization that's done a lot for me. Looking ahead, I plan to pursue an advanced engineering energy systems certificate degree and eventually a master's in either electrical or systems engineering. These goals reflect my interest in understanding how energy, information, and physical systems interact in large-scale engineering environments. My perception of the world has been influenced by culture, education, and personal experiences. Here's a picture of me in my first ever undergraduate internship back in summer 2024. And here's a gear and a brain showing that my perception can conflict between emotional and technical understanding, but I am working on integrating the two. Growing up, I often viewed the world through a problem-solving lens, which is why I went into the path I decided to go into. I have increasingly picked up on patterns over time, and another thing that has affected my perception is media. Many portrayal of successful leaders include being outgoing, dominant, socially, or very charismatic. None of those are natural traits that I have. I tend to be more analytical, reserved, and that's caused me to wonder whether or not I fit traditional leadership archetypes. And one way that was actually broken is that I observe STEM professionals who I look up to today who have different leadership styles that are completely going against the grain of what the media portrays. Some of the most impactful leaders, engineers, and researchers that I worked under were quieter, thoughtful, and more nurturing. They invested time in teaching others, encouraging questions, and creating environments where people can learn and grow. Serving these leaders changed my perception of leadership and showed me that leadership is not about being the loudest person in the room. It's about helping people and teams succeed. My perception was also shaped by the diversity of people I encountered through my internships and educational experiences. Seeing engineers, scientists, and technical leaders look like me succeed in highly specialized fields helped me to understand that it's a possibility for me to be a leader one day in those fields. The implicit association test that I recently took showed a slight automatic preference towards physically able individuals, while the test did not define my belief or behavior. It reminded me that my perception is often influenced by unconscious association. As someone on the autism spectrum, I recognize it often. I process information differently, and I tend to rely heavily on patterns or observable traits. One trait is that I pick up that people who have the traits that I expressed earlier as being socially dominant leaders, sometimes those are the traits I associate with good, while I might associate internal traits that naturally align with who I am as bad. That is actually a habit that I've been working out of as my perception of the world continues to grow. My personality has been generally a very analytical person, and I'm very task oriented, which sometimes makes emotional expression more different. Culture and gender expectations also influence how I express emotions. Like many young men, I feel very pressured to remain composed and solve problems independently. Over time, I have been challenged and have conformed to asking more questions, asking for help, and expressing my emotions in a healthy manner. Two emotional fallacies that affected me are the fallacy of perfection and fallacy of shoulds. The fallacy of perfection led me to believe that I should always perform at a high level and avoid mistakes. The fallacy of shoulds led me to believe that I should already know how to solve every problem. I learned to use reappraisal by viewing difficult situations as opportunities to grow rather than failure. I also experienced emotional contagion in teams and environments where confidence, stress, and motivation often spread from person to person. These lessons have helped me become more effective at expressing my emotions and responding constructively to challenges. Emotional influences don't just affect how we feel, they also affect how we express our emotions to others in the world around us. My communication style has changed significantly over time because of my technical interests. I focus more on information than expression. However, I communicate. However, I've learned that communication involves much more than words. My culture, personality, and experiences have also influenced both my verbal and nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication, that includes eye contact, posture, and facial expressions. I struggled with understanding that growing up, but now, as I've become a young adult, I've learned it better, but still, it's still trial and error. And paralanguage, such as tone, pacing, vocal emphasis, can dramatically change the meaning of a message. That's something that I've been realizing in recent years. One area I've grown significantly in is my public speaking skills and technical presentations. One of my strongest listening skills is listening for information, understanding technical details. As someone who works in a field where you're always getting new information by the hour, you have to be able to process it in a timely manner and connect all the dots. However, one of my weaker areas is trying to solve problems through a concrete mathematical or operational lens rather than understanding how a person feels. One of my favorite psychologists, Brene Brown, discussed the importance of empathy and how it's different than problem solving. Sometimes you need to just be there for people and understand what they're going through before you can present a solution to them in order to understand their level and show authenticity. My listening skills have improved many of my relationships because they help me better understand other people's perspectives that are different from mine. These listening skills I continue to develop are supporting, paraphrasing, and analyzing rather than just immediately giving someone advice. I have learned that paraphrasing and supporting responses also help people feel heard and understood. Forming and maintaining relationships. Trust, reliability, and shared values have strong influences on the relationships I build. Because I am a very private person, I tend to disclose personal information in a very gradual manner. That's why trust is so important in my relationships. One dialectical tension that I've experienced in our relationships is independence versus connection. I'm a very independent and driven individual, but I also struggle to sometimes understand the importance of connection and why having a root system with people is very needed. Another tension is openness versus privacy. I'm learning to understand that too much privacy can come across as disconnectivity, and understanding that sometimes you need to open up to others in order to build common ground. My preferred apology languages involve taking responsibility and making meaningful efforts to correct mistakes. Over time, I learned that healthy relationships require communication, trust, accountability, and mutual respect, and that regardless of how strong or how long the relationship has been with an individual, everyone will experience individual conflicts due to the natural differences we all have as human beings. Conflict styles. My approach to conflict styles tend to be very analytical and solution focused. The reason I put this chart at the bottom is because it reminds me of a systems engineering flowchart, which is a career that I aspire to do one day, and I like to understand the why behind all of the things and how it relates to other problems. I use very collaborative conflict styles because I prefer to resolve issues through discussion and problem solving. Your upbringing, your culture, and your identity all influence how you approach disagreements. One concept that stood out to me was John Gottman's research on emotional flooding. Gottman found out that when emotions become highly intense, effective problem solving becomes difficult. I've experienced situations where stepping away briefly, calming down, and returning later led to much better outcomes. Conflicts can be uncomfortable, but I've learned that it also strengthens relationships when managed respectfully and constructively. Sometimes conflicts can also come up when there are strong opinions or strong changes in a relationship, and it's important that we express those things so we can grow and evolve as people. If I could travel 100 years into the future and receive advice from a wiser version of myself, the advice would differ depending on the stage of life. To my childhood self, I would say this: stay curious, continue asking questions, and learn how the world works through your own way. The curiosity and differences you have now will eventually become the foundation for your future interests in engineering, robotics, entrepreneurship, and broader technology. To my adolescent self, I would say stop comparing yourself. Life moves very fast. Progress is very linear. Not everyone has it together. And what you see isn't always the full story of an individual you're talking to. And the skills that you're building right now over time, whether it be landscaping, whether it be applying for these jobs and internships, they're going to compound more than just worrying about what everyone thinks about you. To my current self, I would say continue developing both technical and interpersonal skills. Keep exploring robotics, energy systems, electromagnetism, and computer vision. Don't be ashamed in being multidisciplinary. That's a strength that you can connect the dots between different fields. Continue building relationships, listen to others, and learn from people with different perspectives. Just because you understand the technical side of the world doesn't mean that it's always going to relate to the side with people, because people are always going to change, and even the technical things that you're studying, they're going to change in the future too. So you have to be connected to people who you can learn and grow from. Based on everything discussed through this presentation, I believe that my life would have benefited from understanding these lessons earlier. But as I was saying earlier, success isn't linear, and progress comes at different times for different individuals. So I'm glad that I learned this at 20 instead of learning it at 25, and so on. Greater self-awareness, healthier emotional management, and stronger communication skills, and a better understanding of relationships have helped me navigate challenges more effectively. In conclusion, this has been a very interesting 8-week course. It's taught me a lot about things that I've been questioning over the past few months, and it showed me that success is much more than technical, business, or career related knowledge. Understanding, communication, listening, empathy, conflict management, and self awareness are just as important as technical skills. As I continue developing as a future robotics engineer and future graduate student, understanding people will remain just as important as understanding systems. Another thing that I'll put to the viewers out there is pay attention to things, whether it's people, whether it's conflicts. Always pay attention and apply your curiosity, but at the same time, give space to other people so that they can express and grow, because we're all going through different things, and it's important for us all to understand how we all operate. So in closing, I feel I'm in a stage of growing right now because of this class, and I feel like this class has broadened my perspective so that I'm looking off of a cliff and seeing the world in a much brighter lens, and seeing that the world is a very complex but also beautiful place. And I thank the professor of this class, and I thank all the peers who have responded to their written responses, and I also am looking forward to how I can apply this class to my life in the future, just beyond my career and my personal life.